Alrighty, so we're looking at Quadralectics governance structures. So I laid out the framework, roughly speaking. Now let's focus in on the governance. What does it mean to have a government that can square things, that isn't top-down, but actually has a feedback mechanism that's both top-down, bottom-up, fractal and cycling? And what I'm trying to look at here is both an issue of scale, the technical issue, how big is the scale of it? Is it localized to an individual? Is it a community issue? Is it a national issue? Is it a global issue? So who and how we're going to tackle it and how coordinated the effort is going to depend a little bit on the scale of the issue. You don't want to have something that's obviously very small, dealing with massive amounts of people. There's just not a need for it necessarily. So a focus on energies, right? Where does our energies best go? This is where they ought to flow, right? So we're looking at the judicial, legislative, executive, and commons branches. So I'm arguing, as before, that those four ought to be operational, roughly speaking. Now, we could divide these up. These are just terms to make the context of these ideas a little clearer. So you make distinctions, you make definitions to get the ideas swelling in a person's head, so that when we do and choose to move forward, we have these kind of groundwork of ideas that can help us, that can support us in that way. So I'm arguing here that the judicial is roughly dealing with I issues. So whatever the issue is, let's have a big question mark, we could say it's a global issue. Well, how is that global issue, therefore, going to affect the individual? And then how ought we implement sort of basic structures or very, very general ground rules that allow the I to be operational? So you have to have, I believe, not a total anarchy. You have to have some degree of punitive measures. You know, it's not right to kill somebody. You know, we can say that. How we ought to enforce it is an open question, and do we even enforce it? But I think again, drawing some sorts of boundaries are probably good. The legislative deals with we issues, or ethical domain, that meaning space. So what kind of meaning can we derive from this, or where is the heart of the meaning of this issue? And are the poets and these sorts of people getting enough groundwork? Are the people in the hermeneutics of the situation allowed to speak their mind? Because they often have a very important role in the sense that this is the ethical groundwork. Is it ethical, in other words? How are we going to react to it? Are we reacting to it in a way that we consider ethical at whatever level? And then the executive deals with the it, or technical issues. Again, this is the domain of science, roughly speaking, and has been coordinated at the detriment of these other two, where there's been a denial of the legislative and judicial. So sort of a gross reductionalism would be roughly just the executive and or roughly just the systemic. A subtle one would be the inclusion of those two at the exclusion of those two. The idea is to include as much as possible. And so the interpretive framework that has happened, has developed from the executive branch taking over, has been, roughly speaking, one of a dominating hierarchy, as we noted in the last video, where the top is vertically integrated downward, which means that everything is interpreted as frisky dirt, everything is interpreted as object. There is no interiority. These two are interior-based. The I is a subjective experience. The we is an intersubjective experience. It cannot really be reduced to the it technical realm. You need to have these operational in a full and fleshed out sense and ever evolving to really make life a majestic place to be. The commons deals with the issues of complexity. So here we have the autopoetic issues, the issues of sort of sustainability in a fairly rough, the functional fit. So I can reframe that in another way, where this deals with issues of truthfulness as an individual, truthfulness this roughly deals with issues of justice. This deals with roughly issues of truth, propositional truth and such. This deals with more or less issues of functional fit, pattern, organization, how things work together in an optimizing sense. When this is functional in line with those, then you have a truly integrative structure because it's open to the different domains or perspectives of being. So when the commons is really integrated, then you do have a vision community. That's why I was calling it vision shares, because they're envisioning a far larger perspective of reality that includes the other perspectives in an integral whole that's ever evolving. So it depends on the scale of the issues at hand. And so that would be, an issue of how many people we ought to get involved in and through things like the internet. We can activate the minds of many through those sorts of technologies. And I would even argue that's where we're moving as a fourth brain. In a sense, we've already kind of got our fourth brain right here, where we have an intermind, and an interlinking of minds, where the executor really is the third brain being an individuated brain, the brain of the single person. And it comes with it implications of being a brain for the autonomy of the self. And that's why it trended towards more narcissism, where this trends towards a high level of inclusivity. That seems to be the realm of the next brain. But it's a brain of inclusivity in a technical sense, in a more objective sense, in the sense that it has science plus. It's inclusive of science. It's transcended singular science into systemic science. And that's where the problems really lie, right? So you need the commons to deal with things like sustainability, world pollution, in a healthy way, global governance. There is going to be a new world order. Is it going to be a continuation of the old world order in a further top-down mechanism? That would be the tripart system. And I think that you need the quadralectic system to help negotiate that complexity by adding something like the commons. What more can I say about the commons? At every scale, there's going to be a kind of commons, and every individual has a degree of commons with them, as do the thieves. And again, although we don't really necessarily have our fourth brain, we have the Turin brain structure, the reptilian brainstem, the limbic system, and the neocortex. The commons is the fourth integrative mind that is being built, and I think at one point will be somehow integrated into our brain mind through things like maybe the internet. Not in the sense of the New World Order, where they want to manufacture consent through these technologies, through integrating these technologies into our brains so that they can further control us. Rather, this will enhance the empathy and interconnectivity and worldview of individuals, the space from which they can do art. The multitasking capabilities will magnify in ways that are at this point unimaginable. In that sense, people like Kurzweil, I think, are very much right in where he sees the capabilities of humans going. However, he is excluding these interior spaces largely and taking it and reducing it to that objective realm, which is a danger, again, for loss of things like the importance of the ethical domain and the individuated artistic domain. So punitive isn't maybe the right. You need that space. I'm just using many words that fit with the particular different realms in a sense. But it really, this space is artistic in its health. It's, it has this kind of reptilian quality for the self. But we're stacking of all of this. And so I don't want to reduce it to just that, as the Darwinians typically do. We have this fight or flight impulse within us, but we also have this great care within us. We also have this ability to causally create reality, and further we have this ability to negotiate paradoxes in a non-dual sense. So that's where the commons really comes in. And these really do, in my opinion, sort of fit with the different states of consciousness. Now, reptiles seem to be only really involved in the gross realm, in this waking state, whereas mammals have a fairly good ability to dream with REM sleep. You can look at their eyes; they have that flicker, which is associated with REM sleep. Humans have not only waking dreaming, but also deep sleep. We reflect on, in deep sleep, the arising of phenomena. That allows us to causally create. We need that space, that state of consciousness, and people can stay awake through all of these states. And then there's the fourth, Turyatita, as it's sometimes called, which is the watching of all of these states arising, the ever-present witnessing. And I think it still hasn't really been properly, the brain is negotiating these mutations at present in a physiological sense, but it's not fast enough. We can't yet. So we have to integrate a technology. That seems to be what this whole domain has been. It's been a bit pathological. It's been dissociative of these other domains of experience, and that's the danger and the fallout of going too far to the its domain, which has been our experience in reality. But we're coming to a place where we can now integrate that if we choose to look at it. It's a matter of being emotionally strong enough to hold these realities and see the potentials of them, which are magnificent. If we actually do look at them, then when we turn and face them, we're going to be so dramatically stronger as beings. It's going to be amazing. And then we can really create the commons together, because we are a commons. Even if we don't recognize it, we have a common space that we're sharing, and it's a heart space in a fairly real sense at a global level. All beings are involved in this. In a permacultural sense, we have to permanently create our culture in a functional sense, so that we organize agriculture, organize industry, organize information in a way that weaves them all together. There's a brilliance in that idea of permaculture, which is essentially that judicial, legislative, and executive branch organized through the commons, because what it's doing is it's organizing. So the judicial, in a mind space sense, is roughly the agrarian lifestyle. They're more or less. The legislative is more or less the industrial, we could say. Well, actually, this is early civilization stuff. That's more right. I apologize. This is more, the legislative would be more or less the agrarian. The executive would be more or less the industrial, and the commons would be more or less the information. This is a really technical issue, but the permaculture allows all of them to thrive simultaneously, because it's wanting to create a permanent culture. So you have the agrarian system that's, using our technologies. It doesn't have to all be heirloom. You can graft seeds and stuff, but you want them to be healthy. So we use our science to the best of our ability to negotiate health, not to create unhealth through foods like Monsanto does. And you use technology in ways that enhance the system, make it more beautiful, make it more connective, make it flow into the different avenues. Aesthetics is a marvelous picture of health of a system, in that, when you see something beautiful, it's not a garbage dump, like we put things into the garbage and just pile it up. Rather, there's a high potential that it's a good system when it flows, when there's beautiful flows of industrial systems working and meshing together. There's not the waste, the planned obsolescence of things. And then the executive branch, the commons is the information, so that there's this flow, this cyclic flow of ever-expanding information that connects and weaves and intricately involves all these different systems simultaneously in a beautiful web, a harmonious web. So governance would enact that in some way, to allow all of these different systems to be of health instead of unhealth.